Well, hello today. Today we're going to talk about how and why family court creates dysfunctional people. Family court touches on the most important and intimate aspects of our lives, right? Um, Karen Huffer wrote a book called Unlocking Justice. Unfortunately, she passed away just over a year ago, October of 2018. But she actually discovered what the problem is in family court. She was a super bright lady. She had a PhD in psychology. So, we're going to talk about and break down some of the things that she discovered while also adding in some of our experiences and hope that this will help you understand what you're going through so that you can overcome the damage that the family courts are putting into your life. Okay. So, what did she discover? She discovered the reason that so many people do not heal from family court trauma. And it's because it's a one reason she put is because it's a man made injury as opposed to natural injury or loss. But more importantly, because the injury keeps repetitively happening, right? It's not just one time injury. You end up going to court over and over and over and getting abused over and over and over again. So because the trauma is repetitive, that injury is never allowed to heal. If you've ever suffered a repetitive injury, by the way, you know that it makes it much more difficult to function in life. You know how much more difficult things, simple, basic things are to do, right? So, plus, the third reason that it's so devastating in family court and the injuries are so deep is because those who we go to for help become the abusers themselves, right? I bet a lot of you have experienced that. So we are left in shock that we're not getting the protection and the help from the agencies. And excuse the noise if you hear it. I'm at a Starbucks here in California. So, those we go to for help become the abusers, and we're left in shock that we're not getting protection or help from these agencies and courts that are charged with protecting and helping us, right? So let's take a look at what's going on here. The court system thrives off of primarily two types of behaviors. So we're going to talk about the two that Karen Huffer introduces first, and then we'll add in our own parts to this. One is she says there's a power-centered behavior and a conscience-centered behavior. So you have a PC over here, that's power-centered, and a CC over here, conscience-centered. So the power-centered behaviors might be people like those that you call narcissists or psychopaths or sociopaths, people that we've known in history that have those type of behaviors. One, you might label some of your politicians this way. I'm not going to name any of them. But also very famous ones are like some of our dictators, like Hitler, Stalin, people like that would have fallen under the PC category, and they had support of their government and support of many people to continue those behaviors. And that's a lot like what happens in these family courts. The other side of it might be you. I don't know which one you are. By the way, not all PC behavior is bad. We do have studies showing that narcissistic type of behaviors in business can actually help you achieve things like the management, to be able to tell people what to do, right? A lot of them don't have much of a conscience, so they don't have problems firing people or making certain decisions that might seem super harsh. So those behaviors actually help them in business. Whereas on the other hand, the conscience-centered person believes in ethics and morals, and they have values that they think that people are actually going to follow laws and enforce laws. They aren't so much into manipulating things. Now, all of us do have aspects of manipulation, which we're going to go over later. But for the most part, that's how we're going to separate and categorize the two main basic behaviors that drive these courts, okay? So, These court systems thrive off of these two types of behaviors. Why? Because the power centered person is asking for the court to give them more power than they're actually constitutionally allowed or that they would be able to have without the court. Let's give you an example on that. That would be a parent going to the court saying, hey, I want my children to go to bed at certain times, eat full three course, or not three course, 3 meals a day, and I don't want them to be exposed to certain things. So what does the family court do? They will pick whether or not they want to side with that parent, and then they'll put demands on the other parent to say, now I want you to follow these routines. I don't want you to discuss certain things with your children. So they will adopt the beliefs of one parent and make that parent superior, make the other one inferior, right? So that person who wanted power over you that maybe wasn't able to get you to comply or agree with some of the decisions they were making for the children while you were together, whether you were married or just together or just trying to get along, so maybe you gave in to some of those things, the court now will put an order in place forcing you to follow whatever it is they decided they're going to order, right? And so that's how it feeds that power and what we're going to call also control, and how it starts to make you feel trapped within the system. And I'm going to show you a picture that I drew in a little bit on that as soon as we get there. So the court system is thriving off of that. They're making money on that person, asking them to give them those things, because every request you make to the court, you have to feed it, right? And what do you feed the court is money. So where did Karen get these concepts other than she studied psychology? Is there are social studies that were done, and so she got a lot of these concepts from that. So these are proven concepts. So we're gonna use those premises. If you guys disagree, put in the comment if you think that there's something different going on or you had a different experience, because I do want to know about that. We do evaluate as much as we can so we can have as many examples to facilitate and help as many of you as possible. So another example of a CC, I didn't give any, by the way, would be like she gives the example of Mother Teresa. So can you give me some other examples of people who you think are conscience centered? Maybe people you model after in life. And which one are you? So we're going to go on to the next phase. I can't actually see your comments. I guess, let me see if I can see them. Okay, there we go. Now I can see your comments. Perfect. Okay. Wow. So one person just commented they've been deprived of their right to be a parent for over 25 years. That's really serious. So sorry to hear about that. I hope this will help you. If you do still have children or you're dealing with grandchildren, you want to change this process to protect them, then keep watching. So did you cooperate with your deceiver? All right. This is a trait of a conscience centered person, is they tend to cooperate at first thinking that if I just cooperate a little bit, maybe this other person will get like let up. Maybe somebody in the courts will start recognizing what's going on and provide some protection. So I was reading some comments yesterday and I noticed some things that reminded me of what I did in the beginning, which was I refused to talk bad about my ex. I refused to even like give much information to the courts because I was thinking it's none of their business, right? So what? Okay, we had problems. We couldn't work it out. We're splitting up. Why do I need to air all of this dirty laundry in the court? Little did I know that by not doing that, they were more likely to get their way. But I started thinking, there must be a better way than doing it this way, right? It's too expensive to do it that way. It doesn't net predictable results. By the way, we're going to talk about that a little later too, like what makes these people, the PCs, lie so much, right? Lie about you, manipulate facts. We're going to look at that. So, did you refuse to slander the other person back, or did you refuse to drag their name through the mud despite the fact they were dragging your name through the mud and shaming you, destroying your character, destroying your career, and making others in the courtroom think that you were a terrible influence on your children? That's probably the most devastating one, isn't it? That you're a terrible person and that the ex had to get away from you in order to quote unquote save the children. I think the hardest thing for me to read in my orders when I was on the when I started actually losing some rights and ground was every order the judge made, he would put that it was made in the best interest of the children or for the protection of their health and welfare and safety. And you're thinking, what safety issue? Who are you protecting them from? Right? So it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling to leave that court and see orders that say they're basically protecting your children from you. And really, what it boils down to, from your love, right? So your ex plays this role that I had to come to you, court, because I need to save my children from this other parent's influence. And they even may state things like, even though they still love you dearly, right? How sick is that? Right? It still makes my stomach turn when I think about that. So they still love you and they had to do this for your own good, right? Looking out for you like always, right? Yeah. So if any of you experienced that, or is it just me on that one? So the issue is, what I believe is that you still believed that good exists, right? In your ex, and that the process will prevail, that the judge will see the bad things in the ex and they'll stop it. You didn't want to believe that there's evil in other people. And that's probably because you're kind hearted, you're a good person with a good soul. You think other people are just like you. So you think everyone has what you have inside, a conscience and good intentions, right? So you still believe that good faith exists, is what that boils down to. But I bet you have even gone to people your ex has influenced and you thought, oh, I'm going to give you the other side and tell you my side of the story, and that's going to get you to at least be neutral and stop shunning me or pushing me away, treating me like an outcast. Or and avoiding you, right? So what happens with the schools and other people that you deal with, even the therapists that the court may force you to go, or maybe the two of you agreed to, but they start even pushing back, right? They might even tell you, hey, maybe it's time to stop fighting. But what does that mean? Then you have to give in. So people start avoiding you. They start siding with the ex, or at worst, not just siding with them. Some start joining the ex in the campaign. And that's when the real damage and abuse starts to set in, doesn't it? And the shock. So they start turning you or turning your children on you and others on you. They warn others not to trust you, and they start protecting your children from you. There was a time in court where my ex's attorney actually was in contact with my children on her phone during one of our first hearings and was saying things to the court like, we need to hide these children from the mom. They don't want to be around her. There was no abuse being charged or anything like that happening. It was just a tactic that they use to make you feel horrible and to get the court to side with them. Because what starts happening, even though you might be getting victimized, is they turn on you. The court turns on you. They start acting like they have to protect your children from you. So things you should start doing right now so that reality can set in and your mind can start healing is you need to read things like, there's a paper that talks about life is the art of being deceived. It's called the cognitive neuroscience of deception. I'm going to actually put it on my blog site, the link to where you can get that after this live video. So you can go there at fixedfamilycourts.com/blog and go to the link, read that paper. It will teach you so much about these behaviors. And once you start understanding some, you'll be able to start applying solutions and overcoming this. So what's driving the behavior that's feeding it? You guys know? I mean, any of you want to take a stab at it? What drives it? I'll give you a hint. The enticements, maybe, right? The enticements in family court litigation. What do those do? They destroy any hope for cooperation or relationships and healing. So later on, you guys might have to face each other at events, at your children's events, and things like that. And what does this do is it actually encourages your ex not to cooperate with you. How many of you, if you are primary and you're being brought back into the court for a modification, how many of you felt punished for actually giving the other parent time with the child? Maybe I've dealt with parents like this. Maybe you took care of the child during their first years of life because the other parent took off, and now they're back in their life, and you actually said, hey, I support your relationship with them, as the codes claim to protect you if you do. And then they come in and they start attacking you with these tactics, and the court supports that behavior. So it basically destroys cooperation, right? Cooperation gets punished. It doesn't actually get rewarded the way that they want to make you believe. So, what other benefits do people who act like narcissists get from this system? Anyone else want to take a stab at it? They can strip you of your dreams, something they may not have been able to do, right? When you guys were breaking up, maybe part of it was they were holding you back in the relationship. So now they're using the courts to actually employ what they couldn't do. They can strip you of your dreams, strip you of dignity, leave you in poverty. Those are powerful, powerful, what do you call it? Attractants for power-centered people, right? They are powerful. They feed off of those things. So they can force losses in your life. They can take your children. They can make you do things they couldn't make you do during the relationship, right? They can make you ask them permission to see your children. How many of you have to do that right now? Make you dysfunctional, unable to work, suffer from anxiety and PTSD. They could increase they can cause you to change your career choices. I had to do that. I had to change my degree plan. Do you think I would have done that otherwise? No. So let's look at what tactics they use to break you and get the court on your side. Okay, first we're going to show you this drawing that I made. If I can get it over here. All right. So I'm going to explain this to you. This is the family court up here. So here's your PC and here's your CC, right? So this is the power-centered person, and this is the conscience-centered person, who's eventually, or actually this eventually is going to be called, I'm going to call them the control center, and you're going to be the forced cooperative center, right? So what do? They utilize the court system. Here's the judge. He makes the orders. And these little people falling down here are the ones that the court puts into the process who end up siding with your ex. So this is like the guardian ad litem. This might be like a facilitator or a custody evaluator. This might be a therapist or a psychological evaluator. And all these people start producing more reports that start supporting the other side, the one that's asking for the control. So what happens? This is the ABCs of family court, right? They start getting the court's approval. They reap the benefits from the court. They get child support. They get a lot of times they get their attorney's fees paid for. The other benefits they get is they get boasting rights, right? They can go to the courts and say, I'm in control. My ex did that at one point. And then what happened? It's other people in the system started shuttling my kids away from me anytime I came around. Oh no, you can't have lunch with them. You're not supposed to be around right now. Your ex is in control. You have to get permission for that too. So they get boasting rights. They get community support. And community, I don't just mean outside social communities. I'm talking about in the court system. even all the way down to your court coordinator, right? They'll get preferences for court hearings, continuances, you'll get pushed aside. So you not only become an outcast with all of your social circles who don't want to hear your troubles anymore because they don't know what to do, but you'll also start to get pushed away by all those working in the court process. They only want to listen to the PC side. So what happens with you in these ABCs? You become, I can't read backwards. You start getting forced into the court demands, right? And you become the disgraced parent, the disgraced person. Everyone it gets disappointed in you. Your kids, your ex will act disappointed. I remember my ex sent me an email saying I had no reason to live. I had no more kids. I had no property. I had no more career. I had nothing left in life. I had no reason to go on to live. So they start bullying you. So the disappointment starts to really bring you down, which sets in that PTSD, those anxieties, and drives some people into suicide, doesn't it? Makes some people very, very dysfunctional to where they can't work. There's people in this area coaching families and parents who say that the majority of the people contacting them are unemployed. So you become exiled. You are now considered a failure. You might even start thinking of yourself as a failure. So what other tactics are used? You guys know? They weigh you down. How do they weigh you down, right? You're grieving from missing your child, missing the kind of life you were able to live before, missing the finances that were able to help facilitate you giving your children, providing things for your children, providing for yourself. They've changed your whole home and routine. Your child's activities that you agreed to before can now be used to cause you to miss time with them, right? What else can they do? My son was in racing. After he was withheld from me for a long period of time, once I finally got the court to give me some time, because he wouldn't give me any, even though we had an order, I had to go back and get more orders just to try to get the time that the court said I was allowed to have. And that got used as an excuse. Well, yeah, you got this time, but because your child has activities, you can't have them until those activities are no longer happening. And I'm like, well, I'll take him to those activities. Oh, no, no, no. That isn't going to work. So it's not really about the child's activities. It's really about minimizing your influence because you are what? You are the disgraced parent. You are the exiled parent. You're the failure. They don't want you to influence your kid. So what else do they do? They they don't want your kid to lose their activities, you don't want your kid to lose the activities, but you don't want to lose your relationship with the kid. So they actually use your desire to be with your child as a way to say, sorry about that, as a way to say that now you also don't look out for what's best for your child, right? So somehow being with you is no longer best, now doing whatever those activities are because the two of you had agreed on them during the relationship when it was in agreement. Now that gets used to tear you from your child even further, and man, that PC really enjoys that. So they inflict intentional pain and shaming. This is engineered by the attorneys in the process. They actually use these to win their way because instead of treating you like, hey, you have rights and we need to protect those, they advocate for your adversarial position. That's what they're taking your money for. And that's a very expensive proposition. So they do things like the timing of serving subpoenas, right? They want to wear you down. They want to make sure you can't get back up after they kick you. So they might serve you subpoenas or other filings, additional filings on your birthdays, on anniversaries that you used to celebrate, on your children's birthdays. They might set court dates on days and times that they know are important to you. Maybe it's a family reunion and things like that. They disrupt everything they can in your life to make you stop. They will ridicule you in court and roll their eyes. That teaches the entire courtroom. There will be people who are strangers watching your hearing if you're not in a juvenile court and the court doesn't tell them that they have to leave because these are public hearings. So they will perform the kind of behavior they want others to mirror, right? So you need to keep that in mind, because if you want to ever control or command the courtroom, you're going to have to learn these things, and you're going to have, sorry about the hairs, this is driving me crazy here. I can see if I can get it behind my ear. They're going to want to get you to not be able to have any support anywhere. Not even from your own attorney. By the way, you got to watch your own attorney. They'll fall into these routines. They'll start repeating things that the other side is saying. Don't let them. Judges will start repeating what they're saying. This is why you have to learn how to control this thing. But what else do they do? Confusion. They keep you in the dark. They don't explain the process or what's happening or what they're thinking or why they're not objecting to certain things. So they make you feel stupid. They use threats. Hey, you won't get to see your child if you don't give in. They use threats of sanctions. You're going to pay more money. They're going to block your filings. You won't get a better deal in court unless you take this. What else? You're going to upset the judge if you don't give in. So they're trying to turn you as a CC, that conscious-centered person, sorry about the interruption. They're trying to turn you, the conscience-centered person, into that cooperative, compliant person, right? So be aware of that. They're going to trick you. We're going to tell you we don't do it that way. Your rights don't apply. Give the judge what he wants, and you'll get better results. Do the psych eval. Prove you're fine. Things like that. They're going to lie. Sorry about that. Someone keeps trying to interrupt. They're going to lie to you and tell you the Constitution doesn't apply. They're going to overwhelm you, pile on burdensome requests. Let's see. They're going to tell you they want the past 10 years of bank statements, right? And activity statements and all the notes and journals over the past 20 years, videos, recordings, emails, texts, all kinds of things to overwhelm you. They're going to cost you. They're going to set hearings on dates you have to work. They're going to set a lot of hearings, and then they're going to reschedule, and they're going to continue them and not tell you so that you show up and then have to come back. So these are all things you got to realize are going on and happening so that you can plan ahead. Right? They're going to schedule depositions that cause you to miss work. They're going to schedule mediation. They're going to eliminate your daily routines as well by replacing them with working on your case. So no more yoga, no more working out at night. No more casual reading or going on a run at the end of the day, because you've got deadlines you have to meet. So they're going to make it super expensive on you. There was a sponsored study done where 395 traumatized people, treatment-seeking participants that were studied, and DSM-4 was a participant in this, and the conclusions aligned with the work of several social studies experts, Bessel van der Kolk, Alexander McFarlane, and Judith Herman. And these researchers researched trauma, that human-on-human trauma, caused, right? Is they wanted to see what kind of trauma or how intense was this trauma. And they said human on human trauma, man-made trauma, was worse and longer lasting, most intense and hardest to overcome. So worst thing that happens in this process is they take and they use your good nature, and they get you to believe that you're not going to take advantage. They get you to believe they are not going to take advantage of that. Right? That's how they get you to start making small agreements. It's kind of like boiling the frog. You make a little agreement here, a little agreement there. Next thing you know, the judge just kind of takes off with a pattern. So they send you into disappointment and surprise when you realize that they led you into this trap. You hired and paid this attorney, and you realize that you were led into this trap. Exactly why I drew the CC, who's now the compliant person, is in a box, because you start to feel like you've been boxed in, rather than boxing the judge in with your rights like you should be doing. So the court's going to give in to this other person, and they're going to treat you with disgust when you don't give in to them. They're going to force you to do the very thing you came to court to protect yourself from. Okay, so you're in grief mode now over the losses forced by the court. So when you have the right tools to fight these injustices, you're going to be able to gain a greater sense of authenticity, your unique self. You're going to make more sense out of what is happening to you rather than get lost in this puzzling and painful universe. Then your grieving is going to be more productive. You're going to learn how to grieve skillfully, remain aligned with your beliefs and your values, and you're going to be able to withstand the beatings and continue to push for justice and fairness to prevail in your family court process. So, yes, you will have to learn to put up with these things because it is a broken system. So, we all know that checks and balances are lacking in this process. And so, how we normally ensure that our government agencies continue to serve us properly and uphold justice is that usually you have, some mechanism where you can go and get protection. And while they're tricking you into thinking that you can get it by paying for more people, you don't really get that in this process, do you? So, if you complain about a judge or a therapist or an attorney, what ultimately happens? It's usually you get punished further or it gets ignored or nothing, it doesn't go anywhere. So there's no whistleblower laws to protect you guys, right? And anti-slap laws, they don't protect you either in this. So you don't have any particular places to go. You actually have to become the checks and balances. So I'm going to give you an example. Like a few days ago, like examples of when systems work, when they don't work, and how our systems have gotten worse. So when you go to the courts, you thought they protect your rights, but they don't. And the only other experience you might have had with government systems before this would be like in criminal law, right? So a few days ago, my sister had a gun held to her head. He actually pulled the trigger and then she sped off. So she did get away. The gun didn't actually go off. So what happened is the police showed up at her house, right? They saw her as a victim. They said, okay, I'm going to come and help you. And they ended up capturing the person. And so she feels like, okay, I'm going to get justice. But that same exact system, my son called them when people broke into his vehicle on one of the lots that he works at, car lots, and it's happened multiple times. And he called the police and said, "Hey, somebody broke in. Can you come out? I have it on video." Nope, cops wouldn't do anything for him. So it's not working for everybody. It's kind of a crapshoot. It's gotten a lot worse than it used to be. We're talking about California where this happened, but it does happen in many places where you may or may not get the protections. Like I know when I was growing up and you called and any of the crimes happened, you could at least get a cop to try and find the person if you had a video or DNA or, if something was broken into and stolen. But now, who knows? You may not get that at all. So what's happening is you are becoming the checks and balances again, and our system, our constitutional rights are set up to help us force change in the systems. So that's what you really have to become here, and that we the people in the document actually becomes you yourself in some of this. So how did our family courts get like this? We're not going to talk historically, but we're going to go through some more of the behaviors. It starts with family courts are designed to take advantage of your desires and what you ask for, and not so much what the law is allowed to do. So you have to correct that, right? I want to make sure you understand this. You didn't know this. You depended on an attorney to do this for you. The attorney vigorously advocated for your adversarial position instead of for the protection of the fundamental rights that the justice system is supposed to provide you, and things like protecting your ability to, your right to happiness and enjoyment, your right to speech and association. There was no special exception carved out in the law that says except for when you don't get along with the other parent. States have carved that out themselves. They're not allowed to go below those rights, but your attorneys don't tell you this. So the need for the power and the desire for cooperation in the court system, making people believe they can advocate for that, has led to this victimization. So converting systems of power, what do we do here? The legal system is converted into a tool or a weapon now one person can use to enhance their power and control. These power monsters know how to shame you, weaken you, and dehumanize you, right? We went over that earlier. There are given guidelines that are actually followed here. So it's not really a random process. And I want you guys to understand that, because you'll be able to deal with this better and differently. Kind of like when you discovered parental alienation and what it was, once you understood it, you were able to provide the right solutions. So that's what we're talking about here today. There is a routine. There are guidelines that are followed. They just aren't the ones you think they are. You might have thought, excuse me, you might have thought the courts act to ensure the enforcement of law and decency, right? So you suffered a double whammy going through this, a double shock when your ex acted in ways you thought they never would. And the courts punished you for not complying with their unreasonable demands, right? They normalized and approved the behaviors that made you feel abused, that you so desperately were trying to escape. There's a pattern here. After the attorney that you have didn't protect you, even though you're realizing now you're not getting that protection, you've grown what? Dependent on them. They've let you down. Another person that's let you down, just like your relationship. You were let down in, you were abandoned. Now you have to also heal, or maybe you had to abandon it because it was getting so bad that corrective measures weren't working. But either way, you've been let down, right? Your expectations are let down. So you have to heal from the injuries suffered, not just from the loss of the relationship, but now you got to heal from injuries suffered from being let down by the attorney you hired. So you at least thought your attorney was your ally, and you find out you didn't even have that. So you think this might be the only place that this has happened, but that's not the case, by the way. Think about how long it's taken for people to get justice against police abusing them, attacking them, killing them. How long has that taken? Right? Family courts are not special, really, so you can look at other examples to figure out what's happening here. We do have a mindset and a bias where we believed that before we went through the family courts, that others would help correct injustices, right? So maybe you didn't even pay attention all that much to the police abuses that were happening and the excessive uses of force until you started going through the family courts. So that was your own bias that you've now been forced to overcome, basically. So our only experiences when we go through family courts that others in the law before this, like I said earlier, might have been criminal, right? Or small claims court, where we had someone to go to who we thought, okay, they're going to enforce the law, they're going to protect us. And I gave you examples of where my sister's getting protection, my brother, my son, not so much. I gave you examples now of police, where people call people out to protect them, and now some of them are actually being killed, the ones who are calling them. So we have lots of mechanisms and expectations that are at play here. And in the family courts, unfortunately, so many of them are used to punish people who come to them for help, right? But when these systems are doing this and they're not working anymore, the shock to you and your system is lasting. It impacts you in your life in very visceral ways. We're built on systems that involve ethics and morals, and when those go astray, so does the balance in our lives. And that's why all of you guys are here today, right? And stick with me, because we're going to get to some very key things that you can do. There's nothing more devastating than experiencing your attorney costing you all of your money and then dumping you, right? How many of you that have had that happen have had to change attorneys multiple times and then have that used against you as well? Seems like you can't win no matter what you do, what you don't do. You get that used against you. It makes you feel abandoned once more and helpless, right? So perhaps the first time you experienced this was when your ex left you, the abandonment feeling, being let down. Or maybe you experienced it before in life, but you had kind of like let that go and moved on in life. And now this is re-triggering those things. These experiences triggering those old feelings, shame, feelings of being unworthy, they can make it even more difficult for you to recover emotionally during this process. So what happens is the courts actually convert that nervousness, like you get stressed and it makes you appear nervous. And those things, if you read that cognitive neuroscience of deception paper that I'm telling you about, that will explain to you that that nervousness and that unsureness is actually interpreted as deception, right? I told you I was going to tell you some key things. So instead of the other person being seen as the deceiver, you start to be seen as the uncredible person and the deceiver. Key tool that they use to flip those natural biological brain functions, tendencies on you. Okay. So, what does that lead to when that happens? Your confusion, those feelings of shame and unworthiness, and all that, it converts into a more severe form of anxiety, which is post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, severe depression. And that's how people spiral into suicide. Okay. Some people do some really heinous things. They completely break and snap, and they might even, take the lives of others who never had criminal histories before at all. So you have very difficult things to overcome to recover emotionally. I told you earlier, my ex sent me emails that I was worthless. I had no reason to live. So if you're already down in that spot and you've already been dumped by everyone, feel like you have no allies and no support system, guess what? Sometimes those have effect. So you probably have guessed by now what the most damaging thing is between the cooperative, conscience-centered litigant and the power or control-centered litigant, right? What is the most damaging thing? If you figured that out, note it down here for me and see if any of you put anything. Somebody said they had to change multiple times, but I think you commented that earlier. Um, so put down there, okay, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's ridicule and lies, right? Shaming. And the court adopts these. They adopt those as truth. They adopt those as fact. And then that courtroom becomes that liar or that deceiver's community. And I told you how that happens. They see you as the deceiver. So betrayal, in these core principles in our life, this betrayal stuns and distresses us. For those of you who have stuck with me, let me go a little deeper into the roots of this behavior. Okay, deception is actually a core innate behavior. It's a basic social abstract reasoning skill that our brain defaults to for survival. And I told you before, it's very predictable, right? So we like predictable things. We're drawn to those predictable things, which is why the court's drawn to them. And you may think, well, but if they tell a lot of lies, they can't keep up with their lies. Well, what a deceiver does is they persuade the others that they're trying to convince to believe the untruths. So then they don't see those little discrepancies anymore. They have bought into believing them, and that becomes very predictable, right? It's a complicated thing, but if you really think through it, you'll see that it's better for the court to be able to depend on, have you ever seen where you watch a true story and you're like, oh my Jesus, reality is so much worse than what they can make up. So it's sort of like along the lines of that concept. So once you have gone through this, you start looking for support systems of your own because you're not getting it in theirs. Did you not notice that almost everybody you encounter will have a story similar to yours? Even some of the facts will match identically. That's what I mean by it's predictable. They'll have done the same things, gone through the same routines, appointed the same kinds of people, spent the same kinds of money, been through the similar number of modifications, gotten the similar kind of results that you have, right? It's predictable. Okay? So what are some examples that you guys can give me where I'm going to tell you it's innate to deceive, it's innate to tell lies. Give me some examples where lying is used to maintain basic social relationships every day. They say the majority of the people will tell some form of lie throughout their day. And so what's an example? One would be, hey, I liking on a picture that somebody posts on Facebook because they're a dear friend of yours. Maybe you don't actually like the makeup they put on, like maybe you don't like a lot of makeup, but you like on it because you support your friendship with them, right? And you want them to feel good. And you might even laugh at a joke that somebody tells you that you might even think is gross or rude, but you laugh at it because it's a good friend of yours. And guess what that does? That friend now keeps coming back to you for your input because they got rewarded. So the reason we thrive off of these basic innate behaviors is because our other innate behavior is we go towards rewards, right? Our brain seeks and feeds off of rewards. So we repeat things that get rewarded. So your friend includes you more now, the one that you laughed at the gross or the rude joke, because they include you because they receive support and encouragement and confidence from you. So what are some of the things you can do to help reclaim yourself and your dignity? You can learn their tactics. Okay, there's three things I think I put down here. You can learn their tactics so that you're prepared to counter these and reduce the injury that they are able to inflict on you. We teach these more at our website, fixedfamilycourts.com, in a membership site /membership. So learn the tactics they inflict on you. Be prepared for the injuries that you cannot prevent but are necessary to face in order to advance justice, right? So think about what you can do differently if given another opportunity, how you might manage the dysregulation of behaviors that they create in you that they trigger next time you have to face this kind of treatment, because you will have to face it again. Think about what you can do different. Number 2, reframe your thinking. So when you think you cannot do something, tell yourself to try it anyways. When you want to crumble and cry, why me? I'm missing my kids. This is horrible. I can't stand it anymore. Tell yourself that you have opportunity to stop this from happening to others. And you know what, that fight is to that just correcting your brain, saying, look, I'm not going to look at this as why me anymore. I'm going to say this opportunity to correct it for others, because a lot of the system's super broken and it takes a while to get changes to happen. It took me 17 months to get things turned around to the point where I was able to restore my equality in parenting. And if I had just crumbled, or I had believed lawyers that, hey, there's no point in trying because they're never going to change the patterns, all the judges copy each other's patterns, I wouldn't have children in my life today. So sometimes it doesn't change fast enough for some of you. 2 of my children did age out, but 2 of them didn't. Some of you only have 1 child. But what I'm telling you is, if you don't fight at all, then you have no chance at all. Then the lawyers are right. So you really don't have any choice if you want to try and get them back in your life. So just tell your brain, and I tell people I've had to trick my brain a lot. So if you're going to deceive somebody, why not use these benefits, as natural innate ability to deceive yourself? Deceive yourself in a positive way. Reframe it. So when you don't understand something, tell yourself this is opportunity to grow by learning. Education opens doors. Education is the golden key to everything in terms of life, in terms of a career, in terms of having an impact on society, and not becoming the slave to the family courts. Education is the key to unlock the golden door to freedom. Know that you're doing everything possible to restore your rights and get your time back with your children. Keep reminding yourself that's why you're doing it. That is your motivation. That is your reward for doing this. Even if it's unsuccessful, you still will heal better later down the road for doing this. Just giving up, I can tell you right now, if you're here, that's not going to satisfy you. That's not going to be in alignment with who you are and your dignity, and that will haunt you forever. So a broken system, as bad as it is, will not haunt you as bad as giving up will. Now, if you have to do it for your health and reasons like that, and you made the choice because there were reasons you had to do that because your health just couldn't recover, that's again, that's your choice. So remember, what sustains you is your belief that you have a purpose in life. So if they get you to give that up, you're going to get sicker. Number 3, remembering historical figures that did not give in to corruption, who succeeded, right? So you can name some of those, whether it be Gandhi, whether it be Alice Paul, like a lot of you know, I really like her and follow the stuff that she did, whether it be Rosa Parks, whether it be Martin Luther King, whether it be Cesar Chavez or whoever it is. Remind yourself of people who didn't give in to corruption, who succeeded. Can you name a few below that I haven't named? At the end of the 19th century, by the way, the progressive movement successfully lobbied states to enact new political, economic, and social reforms. You think, wow, that's great, right? But what happened with those social, economic, political reforms? They started creating laws that challenged, or they created laws that violated liberty interests, right? So progressive movement was like, hey, we want to enforce this and enforce that. They love enforcing morality on people, right? They eventually created like Jim Crow laws and things like that. So people started suing in courts for deprivations of liberty without due process of law. There were minority business owners who sued because cities put into place laws that allowed government officials to deny or approve businesses certain permits, and they would use that power to deny people of certain races that they didn't like, that they wanted to drive out of business. And you've seen lots of other laws getting used, like recently. What laws do they use to do that with? They use laws about people who they don't like gays. If they don't want to do business with gays, you heard about the cake maker who didn't want to make a cake because it violated that cake maker's beliefs, right? So they started fighting against some of those things. So some movements cause some of these laws to be put in place. And what are some of those that are affecting you guys today? Best interest factors, right? Those were actually put in place because of a movement to ensure that parents got to continue raising their children. Actually, way back when, it was to ensure that fathers got to continue to benefit from their children's earnings and also continue to make the decisions regarding their children. And this is before women had rights to have the children. So best interest actually got put in place to protect people from government abuses, didn't it? So that's all I'm going to teach you about that part of the history. But just know that many laws get challenged, and that's what you're challenging now. So it should be no surprise that parents are rising up and fighting back, right? Anytime courts, legislators, leaders become part of the abuse and create support and advance abusive practices, what do we use as corrective action? Right? And think about those people that you admired who were successful in their movements. How would they approach the course today? Would they just give in and say, all right, you're giving me, some kind of deal that it's not exactly what I wanted, but I'm going to go ahead and take it because I'm tired? Is that what they would have done? No way. No way. That's actually how they shut movements down, by the way. And I have another video that I put up here on YouTube, and it's on the modification trap. You need to watch that if you haven't, because that talks about that very behavior. If you start giving in to those little things, they shut down this movement. So you need to decide for yourself whether or not you're going to follow those that you admire, or whether you're going to let them make you more sick and let them injure your children and you more. How did the people that you admire from those movements approach the situations when they were attacked, right? Think about the lunch counter sit-ins. So how did they approach those attacks? When they were told that their resistance was wrong or illegal, what did they do then? Okay, so put those comments down below if you know those answers. Use that as your guide. Approach the court with pride and confidence. So, what I'm going to leave you with today is your psychic injuries are improved when you regain control over your life. You command the courtroom. They may be changing your life, but you can have control over what you do with this change. So, I'm going to repeat that one more time. Your psychic injuries are improved when you regain control over your life. How do you do this? They may be forcing change in your life, but you can have control over what you do with that change. So now I'm going to look at some of the questions that you guys put here. Let's see. How they make their lies known. They're false allegations and playing victim. They victimized me of anything, but I tolerated it. Good, good. Okay, so Big Ninja, you said you tolerated it, but what did you do with that? Okay, so you tolerated, so it's like the lunch counter sit-ins. They threw hot coffee on them, right? What happened after that? Okay. That's what's important. That's what I want to know. Did you convert that into something effective? Did you then take and go learn about why they were doing that so that you could figure out what your next move needed to be? Right? Did they get you to later concede to something because they set a pattern? Did you recognize the pattern and get through that pattern and convert it into success? That's where we need you to go. So it's great that you tolerated it, but now let's give you some tools so you can actually continue the progress with making or putting in fairness and justice into the process that you're dealing with. And let's see, for some reason the comments still they like disappearing on me here. Here we go. How to fight contested divorce without an attorney. Well, certainly you guys can learn this stuff pro se. What I always say is just make sure you get an attorney to tell you about the legal technical parts of it, because what'll happen is you will get sanctioned if you file something incorrectly, or you'll not be able to get your story in front of the court or your evidence, and that will just kill your case. So I hate seeing people lose over little technical things, like little big technical things like that, because that is part of due process. And so if there's anything else you want to comment to me, I'll see these comments later and I'll check on them. But I do need to cut out. It's been almost an hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope some of this helps you one day or tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye.